ASMR Who, and today I'm going to be talking about Big Finish again, but a slightly different sort of format to the usual Big Finish reviews that I've done previously on my channel. The main range reviews will continue, but I'm going to slightly change the way I'm doing those. But of course you've seen the title, you've seen the thumbnail, and you know we're not talking about the main range today. If you saw my video about everything released in 2023, last year, obviously there was a lot of Big Finish released last year, and you'll have noted that I talked about a lot of the Big Finish, what intrigued me and what what piqued my interest, because I hadn't listened to a lot of current Big Finish. I talked a lot in that video about the 11th Doctor Chronicles, the sort of ongoing storyline that I'd heard very good things about, and I sort of speculated that I might, whilst recording that video, and after recording that video I decided I am going to take the plunge, and decided to go ahead and take the plunge on the 11th Doctor Chronicles range so far, the ongoing storyline with Safiyya Ingar as Valarie Lockwood, which starts in this set, Geronimo. So I have purchased everything that has been released so far in time. Hopefully I'm going to get through it in time for the Victory of the Doctor release, which I believe is sometime in February. But I thought I would talk about these stories and basically talk through each release in its own video. So yeah, I'm going to stop sort of the preamble and talk about the three stories in this set, starting off with The Inheritance by Alfie Shaw. Now, Alfie Shaw is the producer for this range, and I think that what he's done is the way he and Nicholas Briggs and Jacob Dudman and everyone else involved have sort of transformed the Chronicles range into basically 11th Doctor adventures. You just don't have Matt Smith, but you can barely tell. I think it's really great, and I think that they've taken a really interesting point in the 11th Doctor's life, and given him this new companion who's a really good match for the character. It's really interesting and really intriguing. I'm very excited to see where the story goes as it progresses. This did also, I will mention as well, that this came with there's a bonus sort of prologue called Clara, which basically just establishes where we are in the Doctor's timeline. We're set in between the Snowmen and the Bells of St. John. So he's actively looking for Clara at this point, but he's not having much luck finding her. But that brings us to, episode 1, The Inheritance by Alfie Shaw, which obviously introduces Valarie Lockwood, played wonderfully by Safiyya Ingar. It was from the 52nd, 53rd century, and she lives in this sort of it's sort of this closed off community environment on Earth in the future, and everything's run by this sort of corporation called Fulcrum, and and her mother and two friends, family friends, who are, they're just at the house. They're going to have a dinner, they're going to have a takeaway, and then the Doctor shows up at their front door with a bomb. And then what happens is one of the friends of the family, one of the friends of Valarie's family, passes away, and there's this virus sort of thing that's killing people, and the Doctor and Valarie are tasked with finding out what it is, finding a cure for it. But of course it turns out that everything is not as it seems, and I don't want to spoil the story too much because I think this box set was really good, so I do want you to check it out yourself. If you've not listened to it, I definitely recommend it. But it's a really fun sort of story. You get a really fun dynamic with Valarie and the 11th Doctor. Valarie, who is from the future, has sort of almost robotic, cyborg sort of legs and arms, basically. So she's got a strong punch, and she's a little bit more physically capable than some other companions are. But she doesn't put up with the Doctor's shit, and kind of, is very quick to call him out for things, and but she's also got this softer side to her. I think The Inheritance is a really, really strong opening story. It's a really strong first story for a companion. It's definitely up there with other first stories for a companion. I'm thinking more in the new series. In the old show, companion introductions weren't really, they were important stories, but like a lot of times in Classic Who, you just sort of get on with the story, and this is the new person who's in it now. In the new series, you get a little bit more focus on the companion, and that's definitely true here with Valarie. She's very much, they kind of take the Rose route with her. Rose or Martha or Donna, you get to know her family, you get to know her mother particularly. You get to see a little bit of her home life, but she very quickly develops this really fun dynamic with the Doctor, and is also absolutely put through the ringer here. It's really fun. It sets up mysteries and things that are clearly going to continue into the rest of this range, right up until this new the Victory of the Doctor release, the end of this ongoing story. It's a really fun story. It's a great introduction to Valarie. Jacob Dudman, both Jacob Dudman and Valarie Safiyya Ingar, are fantastic throughout these stories. They are brilliant. I think Jacob Dudman especially, not only does he sound so much like Matt Smith, you can kind of tell it's not Matt Smith, but he gets the essence of the character. He just gets it brilliantly, and what's great is that I'm not sure that, I think Valarie is a great 11th Doctor companion, but I'm not sure that Safiyya Ingar would have the same chemistry with Matt Smith as they do with Jacob Dudman. And obviously it's the same character, but you've got a different actor portraying it, and I think that their chemistry would be very different with Matt Smith. It would be a different energy, but they really gel with Jacob Dudman. The pair of them just immediately click. They have a great rapport, and you get that instantly. I think The Inheritance is a really strong story, a really fun story, a really great take on sort of this virus, and a technological kind of virus, and what is causing these people to die. It takes some really interesting turns, and there's some really powerful emotional moments in this story. I really enjoyed it. Then we move on to The House of Masks by Georgia Cook. is a historical story set in Venice during Carnivale, which is really fun. I think, for me personally, was the weakest of the three, but make no mistake, it is not a bad story. It's really strong, it's really fun, it's got a great sound design, it makes great use of the fact that we're in a location in a similar sort of time period to this Doctor has already visited on TV, of course, in the Vampires of Venice. You get allusions to that in this story. They don't forget that this Doctor has been here and has experienced an adventure in this place with certain characters who he's not travelling with anymore. And they don't, it doesn't overtake the story, but you get those allusions. It's not forgotten. It's also a really fun, interesting story. It's interesting. You go to Venice, you have the Carnival sort of thing, but then it then kind of gets funneled into this one location, and that's where the main bulk of the story takes place, in the titular House of Masks. But it was really great. It's really fun because you get the Doctor who encounters this character, this woman who's saying, there's a man here who wants to kill me. He's trying to kill me. I need you to help me. And Valarie then meets this character who says, there's a woman in here and I have to kill her, and you have to help me kill her. And so they're both they both interact with the different sides of this conflict and what is going on here and who these people are and where exactly they come from. It was very interesting revelations, and a really fun, really kind of bittersweet conclusion that, the day is saved, of course, in the end, but I think a lesser story would just have everyone go, oh, thanks for fixing everything, and everyone's happy and smiley and cheerful. But this story doesn't do that. It goes, well, yeah, thanks for fixing everything, but one of the characters in this who has been through a lot, they go, I don't think I'm ever actually gonna get over this, not in a really dour or depressing kind of a way, just an acknowledgement that things have happened that have affected this character that aren't just going to get brushed off because the problem is solved now, which I really liked that. I thought it was a very mature way of acknowledging the fact that, in a lot of Doctor Who stories, a lot of bad things happen to characters, and you don't always get to see the emotional fallout for the side characters, but you do in this, which was fun. And it's also got a really great moment at the end between Valarie and the Doctor, where they sort of, Valarie sort of confronts the Doctor a bit about, who are you and what kind of a person are you? Which was really well played and well written. And yeah, it was a fun story, as I say. I think the weakest, personally, but that's more common on how strong the other two stories are, rather than this story being bad, because the House of Masks is by no means a bad story at all. It's really strong, but so are the other two stories. One of them has to be the weakest, one of them has to be your least favourite, just sort of by process of elimination. But it was very, very strong. I did enjoy it. And then you get The End by Roshana Patel, which is a really interesting story that it opens with we're on this sort of spaceship and the Doctor and Valarie burst in, and the Doctor is he's like passing out, and he's losing consciousness, and they get him on a sort of medical bay, and then the Doctor dies, and then you cut to the opening titles. But then after the titles, it starts again, and the Doctor and Valarie enter, and Valarie is unconscious, and is losing life signs, and the Doctor gets her into the medical bay, and Valarie dies. And neither of them actually die. They get like medical little nanobots or whatever that keep them going for a bit. But the entire story, there's these two alternating sort of timelines, these two alternating versions of the same sort of story. One in which the Doctor is incapacitated, and one in which Valarie is incapacitated. And you are kind of going, what's going on, what's happening? It does get a little, I did find it got a little confusing to work out exactly which timeline we were in, exactly who was who. It doesn't help when the Doctor becomes involved in both timelines, even though in one of them he's incapacitated because of his Time Lord body. He can kind of keep going a bit more. He's still in pain, he's still struggling, he can barely stand up, but he's still in the adventure, whereas in the other timeline, Valarie is out of it and will die if she wakes up. So the Doctor gets a lot to do, but Valarie doesn't. Valarie takes a bit of a backseat, but then in the timeline where the Doctor's incapacitated, Valarie is very active and ends up sort of taking the lead. And the revelation of what's going on, how these two versions of events are happening at the same time, as that revelation becomes clear, you sort of get. It's very clever, and it's a take on a type of story that could be very sort of cliched and played out, but it was a really interesting. Just the format change of it was really interesting, and I think generally well done in audio. There's a very clear sound effect every time you're going from one timeline to the other, so it doesn't really get too confusing at all. And again, some really fantastic emotional moments in this story, because characters do die, and because there's two versions of things going on. Just because one character is safe in one timeline, they're not in the other, and that's not just the side characters, that's your main characters as well. That's the Doctor, that's Valarie, everyone is in danger here, and you get some really powerful moments, especially with your leads. Again, Jacob Dudman, Safiyya Ingar are fantastic throughout, and it was just a really interesting, well-told story. I think my favourite story was possibly, I don't know, it really is a toss-up between The Inheritance and The End, but it was great. At the end almost felt like a series finale, even though in this sort of ongoing, in the middle of Series 7, 11th Doctor and Valarie series, the big finish have got going now. This is only episode 3. The end is only episode 3. It felt like a series finale. It was really dramatic and really, really powerful. And all of these stories were dramatic, were emotional, were very mature. And that's not to say that they were gritty and they weren't fun or anything, but like I said with the House of Masks, there is a maturity to the way that people are affected by the events that happen in these stories. They're affected by losses, they're affected by grief. People die, and it's not brushed off in ways that sometimes it can be in Doctor Who. And that's sort of the nature of the show, but can sometimes be to its detriment. You don't get that here, you know. So yeah, overall, I think these 3 stories that comprise this first box set are very, very strong. I think Jacob Dudman is a fantastic 11th Doctor. Would it be nice to hear actual Matt Smith perform these stories? Yeah, because they're fantastic stories. They're brilliantly well written. I would love to see what he can do with them. And they're absolutely worthy of being TV stories. You know, I was listening to them, imagining them on TV in my head, and I was just thinking, you know, these are brilliant concepts. It's almost a shame to waste them on audio. So it would be nice to have Matt Smith, but as I say, Jacob Dudman is absolutely fantastic. You kind of don't really notice that it's not Matt Smith. At least whilst I was listening to it, in my head I was like, okay, I know it's not Matt Smith, but it absolutely is the 11th Doctor. In the same way that when you read a book, when you read a novel, you know, if you read an 11th Doctor novel, it's not Matt Smith, but it's still the 11th Doctor. And that's absolutely true here. Dudman nails the performance. He's brilliant. And it's not just an impression, he's embodying the character fully. And yeah, as I say, I don't know that the chemistry between Safiyya Ingar and Matt Smith would be anywhere near as good as their chemistry with Jacob Dudman. I just don't think it would be as good. And I think maybe you'd have to tweak the character of Valarie, or maybe you'd have to cast someone else other than Safiyya Ingar, which is, you know, that seems such a shame because they're brilliant. They're fantastic as Valarie. They bring a real sort of, I don't know, I want to say bullshit energy. I don't think that's quite the right word, but after each of these stories you get a little bit of a behind the scenes. It sort of auto-plays when you're listening to it, at least on the downloads, which is obviously how I listen to these, and not on CD. And so you get a little bit of the cast and the crew talking about the stories and stuff. And I think in that, Safiyya describes Valarie as feisty, which I do think can sometimes be a bit like, oh, okay, it's another feisty Doctor Who companion. You know, especially with the 11th Doctor, that's kind of all of them, right? Except Rory. Amy's feisty, Clara's feisty. So when you hear, oh, it's another 11th Doctor companion, but this one's feisty, it's like, well, that's nothing new, but Valarie is absolutely, she's not Amy Bond, she's not Clara Oswald. She's a fantastic character, and Safiyya Ingar is brilliant and clearly has such a love and a joy for the show, loves playing the character, has such a passion for it, and they're just brilliant. They're fantastic. I'm very excited to continue with this ongoing series into the second box set, All of Time and Space, which of course I'll do a review for that as well. But yeah, if you've been on the fence about these sets like I was, if you've heard good things but you're not sure, I would definitely, even if you just start with this set, these 3 stories, decide if you want to continue, because I didn't do that. I was like, what the hell, I'm going to buy it all. So I did literally, I bought all 3 of the sets that had been released and the Broken Hearts individual release. I just bought them all in one purchase. I was like, I'm trusting that these are as good as I've heard they are, and that I'm going to enjoy them, and I do. So, you know, it's absolutely, I have no regrets with that purchase at all. But if you're unsure, buy this set. It's fantastic. It really is as good as everyone has said. It is. I can't wait to listen to the rest of these stories. I'm very excited. I do want to listen to them all and be able to listen to Victory of the Doctor. That's it as it comes out. I get to discuss it, contemporarily. That'll be a real joy because I've never done that with Big Finish before. So yeah, I thought this set was great. All three stories were really, really strong. They're very consistently strong as well. As I say, the House of Masks I think is slightly weaker than the other two, but really not by much at all. They're all very, very strong. Great introduction to this ongoing narrative. And the last thing I'll say as well is I really like the fact that, as I say, there's that little prologue that sort of establishes the Doctor's looking for Clara, but then that is still absolutely a part of the ongoing story, and it's not like the Doctor's looking for Clara and then goes, oh well, I'll travel with Valarie for a bit and whatever. He says to Valarie, he's like, look, I'm looking for Clara Oswald. I do need to find her, but you can come with me if you want. And I like that openness about it, But yeah, that was the 11th Doctor Chronicles, Geronimo, The Inheritance by Alfie Shaw, The House of Masks by Georgia Cook, and The End by Roshana Patel. Three fantastic stories. If you haven't listened to those, as I say, check them out. They're brilliant. And if you have, let me know, what did you think of this set? What is your favourite of these three stories? Have you listened to the rest of the run so far? What are the stories for me to look forward to? And yeah, there should be more videos like this coming out. As I say, I'm going to continue with the Big Finish reviews. The main range reviews will continue slightly differently, but they will continue because I'm still listening to those as well. I listened to the Fires of Vulcan most recently, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, so stay tuned. And thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.